Welcome again to the old principle. Well, here we come with another English instructional program. And today's story is a real story, and it happened in more recent times. I mean, it's not several hundred years ago. So, this is number 138, Saved by a Seagull. Now, this is a bird, and it's a hai-o, it's a seagull. So that means this seagull, or his cousin, maybe, saved somebody, 救了某一个人. So we're going to look at the story. We need the story reader, the storyteller. I guess I'm the storyteller. She's the story reader.
That's right.
Okay, there we go. Number 138, Saved by a Seagull.
Sure. Eddie Rickenbacker was a famous airplane pilot in both World War I and World War II. One day, as he was flying across the Pacific Ocean, his plane went down into the water. Miraculously, all 7 crewmen survived. They crawled out of the plane and into a life raft before the plane sank. The men floated for days on the rough waters. They fought the sun and sharks, but their greatest enemy was hunger. By the 8th day, their rations ran out. They had no food or water. They were hundreds of miles from land, and no one knew where they were. That afternoon, they had a simple devotional service and prayed for a miracle. They tried to sleep. Eddie leaned back and pulled his military cap over his nose. Time dragged on, and all he could hear was the slap of the waves against the raft. Suddenly, Eddie felt something land on his cap. A seagull! Years later, Rickenbacker described it. I sat perfectly still, planning my next move. With a flash of my hand and a squawk from the gull, I grabbed and killed it. He tore the feathers off, and he and his starving crew had a meal. Only a little for each man. But they used the intestines for bait and caught fish. This gave them more food and more bait. The cycle continued for 16 days. With that simple survival method, they endured the hardships of the sea until they were rescued. Eddie Rickenbacker lived for many years afterward and helped start Eastern Airlines, but he never forgot the sacrifice of that first seagull. That's why almost every Friday night he walked to the end of the pier with a bucket full of shrimp and a heart full of gratitude. He threw the shrimp out for the gulls, saying, "Thank you."
Yes. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so here we go. We're going to look now at Eddie Rickenbacker, Saved by a Seagull. Okay, let's go on. Eddie Rickenbacker, some people would say Eddie Rickenbacker, Rickenbacker. I'd ask him, but he's already dead, so I don't know whether I can. But Rickenbacker was a famous airplane pilot. Okay, an airplane pilot is somebody who controls the airplane. 驾驶飞机员. So he's 空军士兵. Okay, he's a military man with the Air Force. He's a famous airplane pilot both in World War I and World War II. 第一世界大战，第二世界大战。So he is very famous. Going on. One day, as he was flying across the Pacific Ocean, his plane went down into the water. 有一天，当他飞航过 Pacific Ocean, 太平洋 his plane went down, 发生故障就坠落 went down. To go down simply means sometimes, I guess in water, it means to go down. You could say crashed also, but it went down. Going on. Miraculously, miraculously, in this case, 有奇迹啊，有奇迹。All 7 crewmen survived. All 7. So there were 7 队员. It took 7 people to operate, to make the airplane fly. The crewmen, these are the people in the airplane, survived. 生存, 幸存. That means they didn't die. They crawled out, in this case, crawled out, 爬出来, crawled out of the plane and into a life raft. What is a life raft? 求生筏 or 救生筏. In other words, it's a little boat that you use for emergency cases, and these little boats are usually made. They're air. What do you call that? Kind of a life raft. This life raft is blows up with air, and they got into this life raft before the plane sank. 这个飞机还没有沉下去. They got into the life raft. So that's the good news. Now we go on. The men floated for days in rough waters. Now, when it says 4 days, in this case, for many days. It doesn't say how many, but 4 days gives the idea for many days. They floated for days in the rough waters. Rough waters. Now, that means there were 海浪, there were waves. It wasn't 很平静. It was up and down, up and down. It's rough waters. They fought the sun. Okay, to fight the sun. Do you actually fight the sun? No, they were how would you say? They were coping with the sun. They were coping. 应付这个太阳. And it was hot. Was it hot? Do you think it was hot? Really hot. And also sharks. 鲨鱼. So, of course, they were in this little boat, which is good. But there's sharks all around, you know. If you see the fin of the shark going along and going all the way around, all the way. And you know what you think about? You think, your heart says, oh, I don't want to get into the water because I don't want the shark to eat me. But their greatest enemy, 最大的仇敌是饥饿. hunger. This is the thing that they had their biggest problem. Hunger. Going on. By the 8th day, okay, their rations ran out. By the 8th day, 第8天，他们的储备的食物 rations， 储备的食物 their rations ran out and they had no food or water. Now that's bad news. You cannot drink seawater. Why? Because it's salty. So they had no more food and water. They were hundreds of miles from land. 离这个大陆，离whatever it is, somewhere out in the Pacific, maybe it was an island. But whatever the case was, they were a long, long ways away from land, and no one knew where they were. 没有人知道他们在哪里。Going on. That afternoon, okay, now this is what day? This is the eighth day. They had a simple devotional service. What does that mean to have a simple? Of course, simple is 简单的. Okay, devotional service. I would say it is 有一点那个宗教的一个聚会，简简单单的，他们是求神的一个聚会。Simple devotional service 聚会 and they prayed 祷告 for a miracle. They prayed for a 神迹，他们为了神迹而祷告。Going on. They tried to sleep. 要试一试睡觉。Now, it's not easy to sleep. When you're hungry, when you're thirsty, when you're hot, when the sun is beating on you, and the sun is 照在你的身上, it's hard to sleep. They tried to sleep. Eddie leaned back and he pulled his cap over his nose. Do you know why he pulled the cap over his nose? Because when you have sunlight, your nose gets sunburn. 太阳会晒坏你的鼻子。这个鼻子太高。That's the problem. Okay? But I have many times, honestly, many times when I go out and I get too much sunlight, 太多太阳, the first place that I sunburn is my nose. Very first place. So that's the reason why he pulled the cap down over him. Time dragged on. What does that mean? Time 过得很慢. Of course, it didn't go really slow, but it felt like that time was going so slow. All he could hear, 他只能够听到是什么呢? The slap of the waves, 这个波浪的拍打他的这个求生法的旁边。That's all he could hear. Going on. Suddenly, 突然间 Eddie felt what was it? Something landed on his cap, 在他的帽子上面。A seagull, a seagull, 有海鸥。Going on. Years later, Eddie Rickenbacker described it. He said, I sat perfectly still. I was planning my next move. 在准备我下一次要怎么样动手。Quietly, quietly. Next slide. Then, with a flash of my hand, I grabbed the seagull and it squawked. Well, I don't know if that sounded like that, but anyway, it squawked. It made a noise. With a squawk from the gull, I grabbed and killed it. So he grabbed and killed it. Okay. Next. Oh, by the way, starving crew. Starving crew. Starving crew means that 他们是饿死的这些队员. As I remember, do you remember, sweetheart? As I remember, one person did die. I think. Not in this story, but I think in the real story, I think one person did die. Okay, going on. He tore the feathers off. Okay, the feathers, birds have 它的毛. And he and his starving crew had a meal. Okay, 他们就吃一顿. Only a little for each man. Each man only got just a little tiny bit. Go ahead. But they used the intestines inside of the seagull, the 内脏, the insides for bait, 鱼饵. So they must have had, well, I don't know, maybe they had something to fish with. But anyway, 作为这个鱼饵, and they caught fish. 他就钓到鱼. Okay, they caught fish. This gave them more food, 使他们能够更加有东西吃, and more bait, 更多的这个鱼饵. Going on. The cycle continued for 16 days. 这个循环 cycle, you know, lasted for 16 days. 16天. But with this simple survival method, method, 这个生存的技能. Okay, this method of survival, they endured 忍受 the hardships of the sea, 这个海上的艰苦 until 直到他们被救出来 直到他们是被救出来. Eddie Rickenbacker lived for many years. I know that he was still alive. I mean, obviously he was alive because I was born during World War II. So I remember hearing his name as a young person, and I have read parts or the whole story at least once. So I've read the whole story. He lived for many years afterwards. after this experience 之后，他活了很多很多年。And he helped start Eastern Airlines. I know China has Eastern Airlines. America has Eastern Airlines too. 东方 only I don't know what it's called in Chinese, but 是一个航空公司 Eastern 航空公司 But he never forgot the sacrifice of that first seagull. 他总不会忘记那头一只的海鸥的牺牲，他不会忘记，绝对不会，一生就不会忘记。甚至于呢 going on, that's why almost every Friday night, 差不多每一个星期五晚上 he walked to the end of the pier. 他走到这个码头，这个最那边的最边的 a pier is a 码头 It's sometimes called a wharf or a dock or something like that. With a bucket full of shrimp. 虾子，这个小虾子 okay? I think that's it. Maybe I better check and make sure that I got the ship. Yeah, 小虾子 okay? A bucket full of them. A bucket full. 一桶这个小虾子 okay? And so he's walking with this bucket, a shrimp, and a heart full of gratitude. 他的心充满了感恩，感谢。So what is he going to do? Going on to the next one. He threw the shrimp out for the gulls. He threw the shrimp, 把那个小虾子这个扔丢给那些海鸥。And here's what he said. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so there you have the real story of Eddie Rickenbacker. So why don't we ask Mrs. Ash to come here? We got a lot more time, so we can talk about seagulls. Of course, we come from close to the ocean, so we see seagulls. But first, let's start here with a miracle. Do you think it was a miracle?
I definitely think so.
Okay.
The timing was just
Yeah,
perfect.
the timing, perfect timing. I mean, otherwise they would have starved to death, right?
Yes, yes.
So it was great timing. Okay. Now they actually prayed, and I believe that God gave them a miracle. But they were also fairly, what shall we say, resourceful.
Yes.
That means that they were able to use all the parts of that one seagull to do different things. I imagine, this is, I guess, that even they saved the feathers. Because, you know, 这个羽毛 and 等等 maybe were even important. I don't know. But when you're way out in there's no land. There's no food. There's no water. There's no land. 看不到人，看不到地，看不到大陆，看不到这个海岛。You know, everything you can. Suddenly, life is very, very precious.
Yes.
And things are a little bit different here. Okay. So it's interesting. Are there things, here's a hard question for you. Okay. Are there times in your life that you simply want to say thank you, and probably cannot say it directly? The people have gone, they are no longer around you.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you say thank you when you're no longer with them? Obviously, he couldn't say thank you to the seagull. 没有办法跟那个海鸥说谢谢 because he killed it. He ate the seagull.
Yes.
Okay. But still he had 有感恩的心, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you do that sometimes? How do you show your gratitude?
Well, if the person isn't around, I try to find someone that is close to me and do something for them.
Okay, now that's creative, isn't it? If you can't find the person to say thank you to, then find someone else. What you're saying is find someone else, 找到另外一个人, and do something good to that person.
Yes.
That's a good idea. That's a very, very good idea. And the reason why it's a good idea is because you always keep a thankful heart, 有感恩的心, and you keep this, and I think that that's quite important.
It makes you more happy and more peaceful.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and you will find peace maybe by writing an email to us.
Hope so.
Okay, write an email to us, theoldprinciple@gmail.com. And our website is www.theoldprinciple.org. Hey, we've enjoyed being with you, and we hope that you will join us again.
Right. Bye.